Now recognize the gentlelady from California, Ms. Eshoo, for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Secretary. And thank you for allowing me to wave on to the subcommittee today. Like so many Americans, Mr. Secretary, I was really appalled by the New York Times investigative reports about the surge in illegal child labor in our country. We have a moral responsibility to ensure that children are not exploited on our watch. Before reading that investigative report, I would have responded if asked about child labor in our country and said that it was part of another century, that it's gone. But on the heels of that, I led 25 members in writing to you on May 25th about this horrible situation, and we got a response this morning. I've been poring over your letter since it's come in, but here are my questions. In the letter that I received this morning, Assistant Secretary Contreras writes that ORR's internal audit found that the agency, quote, adhered to its program policies and priorities designed to meet or exceed statutory requirements when vetting potential sponsors of unaccompanied children. Honestly, you know what that sounds like to me? Nothing is wrong. We did everything right. But there are some terrible things that are wrong, in my view, and I think in others. If ORR is, quote, meeting and exceeding its statutory requirements, A, why are we witnessing such an alarming rise in the exploitation of children discharged from the agency's custody? And B, have the children in the sites that they were found to be in, where they were located, factories, slaughterhouses, construction sites, have they been removed from those places?
Congressman, are you asking, have the children been removed from those work sites? Mm-hmm. That I could not answer because, again, as I said, you probably weren't here, but we've discussed how our authorities, our reach, once we have placed a child in a vetted sponsor's hands, we lose that responsibility.
Let me just say this. I don't ever desire to be, or will I be, a secretary in a president's cabinet. But honestly, if this came on my watch, and even though that's not under my department, I would pick up the phone with the Department of Labor, the secretary, and say, I have some jurisdiction in this, and it's a mess. But I just want to highlight where these children are. Yeah. So that's why I was asking the question.
Congresswoman, we've done that. We've done more. We actually entered into a formal agreement.
But so they have they been removed from these sites? I mean, they're 13 and 14-year-olds working in slaughterhouses, factories, and
enforcement, Congresswoman, with the Department of Labor. I can take back to them the questions that you're asking about whether there's been enforcement at those work sites.
The New York Times reports that, and this was raised by another member, that you told Cindy Wong that, quote, if she could not increase the number of discharges, that is of unaccompanied children, you would find someone that could. I heard your answer. You don't deny that you've said it, but you won't say that you did because you can't talk about it. I think we need to do better. That's my real point. I don't need to ask the question again. But this is so unsettling. This is so unsettling. These are, well, I guess at my age I would call them babies. But these are the innocents of the world. And this is really terrible. And I think that the reporting of your threatening to fire her under, undue pressure to expedite releases, I hope you've gone back to review that. I don't know if you have. Let me ask you if you've gone back to review releases. I mean, is
Congressman,
there too much speed and not precision relative to the children and their lives and their well-being?
Congresswoman, as I've said before, I have not threatened anyone, and I do not threaten.
So did you speak to this reporter and say, or your shop say to this reporter,
I
this
never
is totally
spoke,
inaccurate?
I never spoke to that reporter.
Did you read the full investigative report?
Which
The
investigative?
New York Times?
I read the article. I don't know if it was an investigative report. It was an article. It had a lot of information that I think misunderstands the way ORR operates. And there's information in there that's based
well,
on
my time has expired,
third-party
but I just want to say that reports of trafficking and abuse of immigrant children has more than doubled from 21 to 22. Really, at the end of the day, as HHS Secretary, the buck stops with you. So I can hope, I can pray, I can press. Other members have. Members from both sides of the aisle. This is something that needs to be totally removed from taking place in our country. Really, I think that God's going to hold all of us responsible if this is not addressed and addressed the way it should.
Gentlelady yields back.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Now recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Carter, for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for allowing me to wave on to this subcommittee. Mr. Secretary, I've been waiting for your return to Congress. Last time we had some unfinished business. I want to shift gears a little bit, if that's okay. I appreciate my colleagues' concern about unaccompanied children. I share their concerns. But I have another concern, and it's about the Inflation Reduction Act, specifically about the prescription portion of that. You and I have spoken about this before at this committee as well as on the Budget Committee. And you have expressed and you've said it's your personal belief that the Inflation Reduction Act would lead to more cures being developed by the same pharmaceutical and biotech companies whose research and development you're fixing to slash. As you know, professionally, I'm a pharmacist. And I have seen nothing short of miracles as a result of research and development. And that's why this is so important to me. I've watched families. I've watched families suffer. I've seen children lose parents. I've seen parents lose children. And it's very important to me that we continue with the research and development and the new drugs that I've witnessed in my career, drugs that have been nothing short of miracles. And yet, again, you maintained and said at the last time that I had the opportunity to ask you questions that you believe that the Inflation Reduction Act is going to result in more cures. Whereas researchers at the University of Chicago said that the IRA will eliminate up to 342 cures over the next 20 years. The biotech research firm Vital Transformation predicts that up to 139 drugs will not be developed over the next decade because of the IRA, and that up to 49 treatments currently on the market would not have existed had the IRA been in effect. Even the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, our economists here in Congress, even they said that it's going to eliminate treatments and cures that would have otherwise been developed. We've already had drugs that have been pulled by pharmaceutical manufacturers as a result of this. And yeah, I know there's a pending lawsuit as well from some of the pharmaceutical manufacturers, and I'm sure you're aware of that. I know you are. I just have to ask you, Mr. Secretary, what makes you right and these other agencies wrong? I don't get it.
Congressman, thank you for the question, and I hope you'll agree that no American should be paying 2 to 3 times the price for a drug, oftentimes manufactured.
I understand that. I'm the one that was at the counter having to tell the senior citizen what the price of a medication was and watching them try to make a decision between buying groceries and buying their medicine. I'm the one who watched the mother in tears as she tried to get the antibiotic for her child, trying to figure out how she was going to pay for it. I'm doing everything I can humanly to bring down prescription drug prices, but I do not and I will not stand by while this administration, while this agency stops research and development that I have witnessed over the past 40 years in practicing pharmacy that has resulted in miracles.
Congressman, my response would be that increased competition helps stimulate more production, more innovation, and the more we can lower prices, the more we're going to have that competition. And so if we're ever going to get those prices down of those drugs that cost us 2 or 3 times more than they cost in other parts of the world, it will be because we're able to negotiate to get good prices and encourage not only competition,
this is
but
going to
innovation.
result, and you know as well as I do that you're missing. This is a swing and a miss. It's not. Yeah, the pharmaceutical manufacturers need to do
Congressman,
better,
talk to
but you
folks
know
that
that
pay
it's the middleman. You know
$35
that it's the
for insulin.
PBM, the
That is
insurance
not a
companies
miss.
that are doing this.
Congressman, when you have people who today are paying $35 for their insulin instead of $100, $200, that's not a miss. That's a win.
That's a win for the co-payments, but it's not going to bring down the price of the insulin.
Well, we just saw that 3 other companies have agreed to do the same thing for not just
With the
Medicare.
copay.
Yeah, and that's great
Mr.
news.
Secretary, again, the CBO, all of the University of Chicago, all of these have said that this is going to result in fewer cures. What makes them wrong? Why are they wrong and you're right?
Congress, we know that if you stimulate competition and innovation, you'll have better drugs at a better
Do they know that? I'm sure they know that as well, but they are saying, and I'm just
hope they had a-
baffled by the fact that you're saying that you're right and everybody else is wrong. I was always taught,
I'm not-
son, when
Listen, I'm not saying I'm right.
when it seems like everybody else is wrong and you're the only ones who's right, you got to stop for a minute and think, it might not be everybody else.
Congressman, I'm not saying I'm right. I'm implementing the law that Congress passed. I didn't say that.
No.
I said that.
No. But you continue to go this route in this administration. Again, I have to tell you, I didn't come up here for some egotistical trip. I came up here because I was the one on the other side of the counter. I was the one who had to tell the senior citizens. I was the one who had to tell the patient. I'm going to do something about that. But I'm not going to let this administration, I'm not going to let this agency stop research and development of miracle drugs that I've witnessed in my career. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back and now recognize our last witness, Mr. Joyce of Pennsylvania. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. We're closed, I know.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for agreeing to appear before us today. And thank you, Chairman Griffith, for allowing me to wave on. Secretary Becerra, in March of 2022, the Foundation for Government Accountability submitted multiple FOIA requests to CMS seeking information on the enforcement of hospital price transparency rules. After CMS prolonged delay in complying, a court subsequently ordered CMS to produce all the required documents by April of 2023. Although CMS has provided nearly 2,000 pages of documents, I would like to raise 2 concerns. First, based on FGA's initial review of the documents, it appears that CMS is not adequately enforcing the hospital price transparency rule. Secondly, CMS is withholding over 38,000 pages of responsive documents, claiming trade secret exemptions. First, Mr. Secretary, can you tell us today what percentage of hospitals are in compliance with the price transparency rule?
Congressman, thank you for the question. And it is an important subject. I apologize that I came prepared to talk about the unaccompanied children program. We could try to get, I asked my
Thank
team-
you. I would appreciate the follow-up. Do you feel that CMS has taken the appropriate and necessary actions to enforce this rule to date?
Congressman, CMS has been working very hard to implement any number of regulations and statutes that are now in place as a result of Congress's passage of these new laws. I can try to get back to you on.
Thank you. I think that information is important. Would you agree that by withholding the documents that I mentioned above, that CMS is giving the impression that CMS is afraid of what the public might uncover through this FOIA effort?
Congressman, CMS has been working very hard to implement the different laws that are now in place that Congress has passed. I can try to get back to you.
Thank you. I
any
think
information.
revealing that information would be definitely so important when we're dealing with an issue such as transparency. Further, on that topic of transparency, recent research conducted by the American Academy of Otolaryngology, the Head and Neck Surgery Foundation, has brought attention to significant price disparities between the average sales price and the prices charged by hospitals for certain cancer therapies. The study reveals that some hospitals are charging markups as high as 300% above the ASP for these therapies. We believe that it is imperative to address these issues to ensure fair pricing, transparency, and accessibility of medications for all patients. How do you plan to address this practice and ensure that patients are not burdened with exorbitant costs for life-saving treatments?
Congressman, we continue to move forward with the implementation of the very important price transparency law, as well as the No Surprises Act that you all passed that makes sure that consumers, patients, are not burdened with unexpected bills, that they have a chance to understand what their bill might be if they go into a hospital. I can try to follow up with you with any of those questions. I apologize that I came more prepared.
I thank you. I think that you're addressing transparency with us in drug pricing, as recently mentioned with questioning, is essential for patients. They need to have that transparency to make informed decisions, specifically regarding their medical care. What steps will you take to promote greater transparency in hospital pricing for cancer therapies to prevent excessive markups and ensure affordability for patients?
Congressman, we continue to try to make sure that we're implementing not just the letter of the law on price transparency, but the spirit, which means every American should be able to understand what the charge would be for the services they're about to get. No one wants to be blindsided. So we continue to implement. Obviously, as you know, as you stated, there are a lot of folks, a lot of stakeholders who don't like the law that you all passed, because that means they have to be more open and transparent. So we're going to continue to do the work. We look forward to working with you on that.
And I think to that endpoint, and I appreciate you offering to bring forth that percentage of hospitals that are in compliance with the transparency rule. I think as this committee works towards transparency, works towards access of the greatest therapies in America for these patients who are undergoing significant hardships as they face cancer therapy and cancer treatment. I thank you again, Secretary Becerra, for being here with us today. Mr. Chairman, once again, I thank you for allowing me to wave on, and I yield the remainder of my time. Thank you.
I thank the gentleman for yielding back. Seeing there are no further members wishing to ask questions, I would like to thank our witness again for being here today. Secretary Becerra, thank you. I know that some of the questions were not directly on point on what we want to talk about, but most of them were. And you agreed to get back with some of those questions where you were not expected to be prepared today, and I appreciate that. Pursuant to committee rules, I remind members that they have 10 business days to submit additional questions for the record, and I ask the witness to respond within 10 business days upon receipt of those questions. And I also ask unanimous consent to insert in the record the documents included on the staff hearing documents list. Without objection, that will be the order, and this subcommittee is adjourned.